Warm greetings from the high 10. It's Everyday Shenanigans, and thanks for joining me. As most of you know, on Friday, February 4th, is Summer Wells' birthday. And although we have no information to her whereabouts, if she is alive or deceased, it is still her birthday. And it is a tragedy in itself from the things that we have learned pertaining to her lifestyle, upbringing, parents, having siblings she didn't have contact with, taken by state beforehand, before she was even born, and the fact that her brothers are now currently in foster care. A troubled life that she didn't sign up for, she or her brothers. And I'm making this video because there was something that I was listening to a little while ago pertaining to the behavior of the parents. Dawn and Candy have shown us that they never cared for themselves. You see, self-preservation is number one. Self-preservation shows the obvious. That you care for yourself. You see, if you can't care for yourself, you refuse to care for yourself, then you cannot care for someone else. There's no such thing. You see, I can't like you if I don't like myself. I can't love you if I don't love myself. So how in the world could these two separate beings love one another and also love their children when they have shown the world that they do not love themselves? And they have shown us that on social media. Their behavior has been very disturbing and asinine. At times, unbelievable. And one would question their motivation under the circumstances of having a child missing and their 3 remaining boys removed from their care. The fact that the children were removed, the remaining 3 boys, and they did not clean up the house, is disturbing. Because one, it's disturbing to know that these people live like that with their children, when one was seen not missing and the other 3 boys alongside the sister. So you ask yourself, how in the world were they living like this with their children? It was a deliberate and said choice on behalf of Donald Wells and Candace Bly. When you go to my community page, you will see a video that I shared that is very disturbing indeed. And it gave me pause, time to think and reflect of how awful the property still looks. I doubt that it's changed much. And I said to myself, while looking at the photographs of the said video, why would anyone choose to live like this? Why would anyone raise their children like this? Just deplorable. Debris everywhere, trash outside, broke down automobiles, a makeshift of a house, stuff hanging from the top of the home. I don't even know what that stuff was. Scaffolding for stairs. Very unsafe for anyone, especially children, small children. Anyone could lose their balance. An elderly person living on the property as well. How could that be safe for the grandmother to walk up into the house, walk down to get out of the house? The trailer, the camper where the grandmother stayed. Debris lined up against the walls, the outside walls of the camper. Just deplorable. And It makes no sense. Things lying up on the side of the wall of the house, the walls of the house. Why? Why do you have all that stuff out there? Trash. Where are the trash cans to put your debris in? See, these are the things that they were teaching their children. To not give a damn. To not care for themselves. To not value things. You see, they didn't ask to come here. They brought those kids here. They brought their other children here that they do not have custody of. You see, that's what you need to remind yourself. Is that each of these people had children before they met one another. And those children were taken away. Or handed over, however you want to word it. For abuse, neglect. And these two met somewhere in this universe and meshed in madness, chaos, and brought into the world 4 children. And 1 is missing, and 3 are in the state's care. There's no rhyme or reason for their behavior that we've seen as of late on social media. There was no reason for them to live like they live currently on the Mount 110. There's no logical reason to live like that. And when you look at the said photographs, you will understand that these people have shown that they do not care for themselves, so there's no way they could teach their children to care for themselves. Because they're showing them to not value self, to not value objects, to not be appreciative, to be humbled, to be thankful, to be grateful. They didn't teach their children what they needed. They didn't show them to take care of self, to have pride in self and our things, our home, our property. As I said, self-preservation is first. The way they've behaved, social media has shown us they don't care. They didn't care in reporting their child missing. And that tells you a lot about their demeanor and who they are. Because you see, if you have no emotion in telling the world that your child is missing, you're telling us more than what we know. That there's something underlying wrong with you two. There's something eerily wrong with Miss Bly and Mr. Wells. When Candace gave the interview, Donald Wells, outside their home, she was numb, emotionless, inebriated. It was obvious. No emotion, no crying, no screaming, no bowing of a head, no nothing. Just matter-of-factly spinning the web of June 15th. And that is where the judgment came in by many, including myself. That this woman knows something about the child's disappearance and possibly the orchestrator and or covering up the disappearance of the child and discarding of the child. I do not believe that the child is alive. Too much time has gone and we've got no information from law enforcement to a hint, a clue, suspect, nothing. And that leads me to believe that Summer Wells is not alive. And these parents know this. Who is the orchestrator? I do not know. What are the reasons? Many have speculated. CPS visits, blah, 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 SA. As I said, there have been no known receipts brought to us by law enforcement to say what is the truth or not, who did what, who was covering up what of abuse, neglect, sexual deviances against a child, children. But in the end, it's never going to matter because you're never going to get the truth from these two. Whether it was deliberate, accidental, or to cover up misdeeds against a child. I do believe the two are complicit. So who did what and when and where first and third means nothing to me. It's irrelevant because the child is missing. And at this point, what evidence would there be, if found deceased, to give said evidence of felonious improprieties against a child? The fact that they lost their other children is evident and pivotal in this case. Because you see, they've shown you they walked away from those children, but yet bore more children. So one could say, well, they changed. They made an effort. They had more kids. But what does that mean? Because we've seen how they lived. We've seen the pictures of the children not looking kept up, dirty oftentimes in photographs, and that tells you a lot. Plus, the outside of the property, the inside of the house, unkempt as well, inside, outside, debris, outside, inside, cluttered, hoarded. Once again, no self-preservation, no regard for things, belongings, and they taught their children these ways. No self-preservation, no value, regard for our things. You see, the fact that each had their own set of children that they threw to the wolves, and then these two meshed and made children, and now those children are now gone and one missing, tells you everything you need to know about Donald Wells and Candace Bly. That they could possibly walk away from these said children, never get them back either by not complying and or the state saying they're not deemed fit to get their children. And I think they will be content either way because they've been down this road before. They've been down this road. And I think from what we've seen from the behavior of both, that it was inevitable that this road would be paved again in the lives of Mr. Wells and Miss Bly. Because they were not fit to have children. See, the pattern was always there. And 9 times out of 10, he has lived an unkempt life before Candace Bly. She has lived the same unkempt life. And then they meshed and both live the same now. When they had the children and with the children gone. And the fact that they never cleaned the property up immediately after boys were taken shows you they didn't care to get their boys back. They didn't care to make it safe for summer to return. And as someone asked, very, very important question. What have you done to make the house safe since the disappearance of Summer Wells and the state taking your boys? What have you done to make the house, the property safe? Do you have ADT? Do you have surveillance cameras inside and outside of all doorways, windows, even that infamous basement door? Is there a security camera or cameras there? How can you continue to live there knowing your child was allegedly abducted? This is a narrative that you've spun from day one. But as TBI has spoken, they don't have information to say that that is true. So what is the truth? The evidence has been there from day one that this was inevitable. That something bad would happen to their child or children, and that they would in the end lose custody of 1, 2, 3, 4, whichever number. 1 gone, 3 in the state's care. Each have been down this road before meeting one another. Living an unkempt life, teaching the children not to value themselves, have self-respect, dignity, self-esteem, and the value of personal effects. This is what they taught their children. You see, Mr. Wells and Miss Bly don't care about themselves. So they could never teach their children to care for themselves or others, and to have value in things, to be proud of their things, their home, their property. And the fact that they never speak of their children, talk about their boys. Hey, we're going to see the boys. Hey, we're getting a visit with the boys. Hey, we should be getting the boys back at this time, that time, should tell you something. You see, as I've told you, everything you need to know is at the beginning of the story. The truth is at the beginning of the story. And they have laid out the foundation for the truth. They never cared for their children because they never cared for themselves. And this has been a pattern with Donald Wells and Candace Bly. Whoever they learned it from taught them these ways. They carried it on into adulthood, meshed with one another, and then exacted the same behavior upon their children. And the children didn't have a dog in the race. They did not choose Donald Wells or Miss Bly as their parents. But it's neither here nor there now. Because who has a choice in who brings them into the world and throw them to the wolves? Nobody. Miss Bly has been numb from day one. No emotion, no crying, no screaming, no hollering. Using or basically allowing her husband to do the talking because he knew she would be unfit to speak. He didn't trust her to talk. And they have shown no emotion. He's been more whining about his daughter than Miss Bly. Could it be an act? Indeed. Is he a culprit? Of course. No matter how you wind it up to say who did what, who knows what, who's accused of doing what to what child, in the end, as I said, they are both complicit. You probably will never get to the truth unless one falls on the other. But it's shameful that it is 7.5 months in that this child has been missing from Rogersville, Tennessee, without being seen or heard. And she will have a birthday on Friday, February 4th, turning 6. But yet, she is nowhere to be found. No balloons, no cake, no friends, no party, no nothing. How unfair that is. How unfair is it to be taken from the world without giving your permission? How unfair is it to be mistreated in the world when you didn't ask to come here? How unfair life is indeed. The evidence was always there. No self-preservation. So there could not be any self-preservation for the children. 6 weeks, never cleaning the property, never asking for help to clean the property, discard dangerous items on the property, cleaning the house, making it livable for the children to return, putting in decent furniture, fixtures, appropriate stairs into the house, appropriate stairs to go down into the basement, window treatments to keep out sunlight, cold, working stoves, refrigerators, debris from outside that has no business being on the property, broke down refrigerators, wood, metal. As I said, all things dangerous to children and even adults. The camper also looking horrible outside, things leaning up against the outside exterior walls. Why? Why live like this when you don't have to? But you like it. You have to like it. No way was this fit for anyone, especially children. And to think that the children were born at this location and raised is baffling. Running around barefoot, bare feet, no shoes, barely dressed. This was okay for Mr. Wells and Miss Bly. And as I said before in my live, this is all the children knew. And perhaps this was their normal. Because if they haven't been anywhere to see people live a different way, how would they know that this was abnormal? I think they are content with how they're living after the fact. I don't think the children will ever go back to the Wells. They have done nothing to prove themselves to the court to get their children back. They're not deserving to get their children back. No way in hell, I believe, a judge would allow them to get their children back. And the fact that it is 7.5 months in, you have not heard of them going to court and retrieving their children, that should tell you something. As I tell you, everything you need to know is at the beginning of the story. 7.5 months in, no sight of Summer Wells. Birthday at the end of the week, turning 6. No information brought to us by law enforcement pertaining to her whereabouts, a suspect, anything, and no information released to the public about the boys from the state or law enforcement. No mentioning of the children, visiting the children, seeing the children, hearing from the children, talking to the children. I miss my children. I need my children. We're getting our children back on this said day. We've been complying with all the rules and regulations to get the children back. You've heard none of those said things, which shows they are not getting the children back. And I believe they don't want them back. And remember, if a parent doesn't have a job, they cannot pay the state the due bill for keeping their children. Because that is required in this state. If you are a viable human being and the state takes your child, you are to pay the state monies for taking care of that said child or children. So I think most of us would want them to have employment, to pay the state for their 3 boys. Do they want their boys back? How could they? They've shown us they wouldn't even clean up their own property once they were taken. They've stayed on social media, acting a fool and a muck, and never talking about the boys. You rarely hear any conversation in a video, audio recording of the Wells speaking about the boys in a positive light. Retrieving of the children, getting the children back, visiting the children. Hey, we went to see the boys. They're looking good. They're growing. They're getting bigger. We missed them. They miss us. It's only going to be a short while till we get them back. Everything's good. When have you heard that in a conversation by Donald Wells or Candace Bly? We've only heard of a complaint that wherever they are, it was too far for them to drive. So one could say if that information is true, it's not that the drive is too far. It's just that you didn't want to go drive to see your kids, which tells me you don't want your kids back. Then just say that. We fucked up and we don't want the children back. We did not want Summer Wells. That's why she is gone. And we are content with all 4 children being gone. Have mercy on these 2 souls, that they never ever breed again. Not a cat, not a dog, not a human. Because it would be unfair to either to be reared under these 2. They never cared. And that's why Summer Wells is missing. And her 3 brothers are in the care of the state. And it was only a matter of time that there would be a story, a horrible story, coming from 110. I think we all know that. It was only a matter of time. This is a very tragic story. And sadly, there will be more stories like this coming out of Tennessee, out west, East Coast, everywhere. Because you have cruel people breeding children, animals, and they don't care for themselves, and they don't have the fortitude to take care of a said human or an animal. But yet they try anyway, knowing they don't have what it takes. And the right thing to do is just forfeit your rights and pass the baton to someone who can, and pray that they'll do a better job than yourself. But these two are selfish because they've been down this road before with other children that are no longer in their care, and they had the audacity to have more children who are now gone and one missing. Self-preservation. You have to have self-preservation in order to care for other people, to love other people. Care for your children and love your children. Because without self-preservation, you can't teach a child to love himself, herself, and others if indeed you don't love your own self. You never cared for yourself because you don't like yourself. The evidence has always been there that the children were never important. None of their children were ever important. Thank you for joining me. If you want to donate to the channel, $Big Angie 129 Cash App. Prayers for Summer Wells and her brothers. God knows it would be wonderful to hear the laughter of Summer Wells by February 4th. But I have a feeling we will not be seeing or hearing from Summer Wells, nor will we hear her laugh, see her smile, see her run through the grass and play with other children. I don't think that day will ever come again. God help us all. Thank you for joining me. This is Everyday Shenanigans.